The private room at the Monarch smelled of truffle oil and quiet money. My sister Lauren sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, her face glowing under the dim amber lighting, soaking up every compliment like it was oxygen. She was celebrating what she called her brand launch, a 2-page spread in a local lifestyle magazine that she insisted was going to put her on the map. My mother, Susan, stood up and tapped her fork against her crystal flute, and the room hushed instantly like it had been trained to obey her. "To Lauren," she said, her voice thick with performative pride, "to the bravest person in this family, the one who isn't afraid to chase the big dreams." Everyone clapped. I clapped too, my hands moving mechanically because that was what I had been conditioned to do. Then the waiter arrived. He did not go to my mother. He did not go to my father. He walked straight to me and placed a heavy leather folder beside my water glass as if it belonged there. I opened it. $3,450. I stared at the number. It wasn't just a bill. It was an assumption, a habit, a rule they expected me to follow without question. My mother leaned over, her breath smelling of expensive Merlot, and whispered that teacher salaries are stable, sweetie, as her manicured hand patted my arm like I was a loyal pet. "Support your sister, it's the least you can do." I looked at her hand on my arm, then I looked at the folder. I did not argue. I did not explain. I did not plead. I simply closed it, placed my fingertips on the leather, and slid it back across the table until it hit the stem of her wine glass with a sharp clink. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now, because I want to see who is here with me in this moment. The silence in the restaurant was instant and total. It wasn't the polite hush of a pause in conversation. It was the suffocating vacuum that follows a gunshot. My mother stared at the folder resting against her wineglass, her face frozen in a kind of offended shock, like she couldn't comprehend a world where her rules didn't automatically apply. Lauren's mouth hung open, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. The guests, minor investors, a few local bloggers, friends of friends, shifted in their seats, wide-eyed, suddenly aware they were witnessing something they weren't supposed to see. I stood up. My legs felt strangely light, as if I had been carrying weight for years and had finally put it down. I looked at Lauren, then at my mother. "I think the brand should pay for the launch," I said. My voice was calm, steady, loud enough to carry to the back of the room. I did not wait for their response. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair and my mother's hissed whisper, "Madison, sit down." I kept walking. I walked past the host stand, past the coat check, and out through the heavy oak doors into the cold night air. The wind hit my face sharp and biting, and for the first time all evening, I took a full breath that felt like my lungs finally belonged to me. My fiancé Jacob was right behind me. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't ask me to explain myself. He just opened the car door for me, his jaw set in a hard line, and he got in after me and started the engine. The drive home was silent. The only sounds were the hum of the tires on the pavement and the rhythmic thrum of my own pulse in my ears. I stared out the window at passing streetlights, waiting for the guilt to hit. I waited for the familiar wave of panic, the urge to apologize, the desperate need to fix whatever mess I had made. But it didn't come. Instead, there was a strange cold clarity. I looked down at my hands resting in my lap. They weren't trembling. For years, I had been the one to smooth things over, absorb the shocks, and pay the price for everyone else's comfort. Tonight I had handed the bill back, and the world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. I was just sitting in a car driving home with my wallet still closed. Jacob reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I said, and my voice sounded unfamiliar in my own mouth. "I think I just resigned." "Good," he said. It was about time. We pulled into our driveway and I looked up at the dark windows of our apartment. It looked peaceful, safe. Inside, my phone was probably already lighting up with notifications, a digital storm gathering force. But out there, in the quiet of the car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a decade. I felt like I was finally driving my own life. I unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet dark of our living room. For years, I had convinced myself I was the strong one, the fixer, the responsible daughter who held the family together while everyone else drifted from crisis to crisis. But standing there, shrugging off my coat, I realized that was a lie I told myself to survive. I wasn't a martyr. I was a gambler. There is a concept called the gambler's fallacy, the mistaken belief that if something happens often enough, the odds must eventually balance out. In relationships, it shows up as the belief that if you just put in enough kindness, enough money, enough effort, eventually the machine has to pay out. I had treated my family like a rigged slot machine for a decade. I kept feeding it coins, convinced the jackpot of love and validation was mathematically inevitable. I thought about the coins I had dropped into that slot. The $3,000 for my father's therapy when he had his midlife crisis and bought a sports car he couldn't afford. The security deposit for Lauren's first apartment in the city because she didn't have credit history. The countless loans for emergencies that were really just consequences of their own poor planning. Every time I paid, I told myself this was the last coin. This was the one that would make them finally see me. This was the investment that would yield respect. Sometimes the machine flashed a few lights, a thank you text, a Christmas hug, a moment where my mother said, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Madison." Those small payouts were just enough to keep me pulling the lever again. But tonight, staring at that bill in the steakhouse, I realized the game wasn't broken. It was designed to take. It was never going to pay out the jackpot I was waiting for. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were steady. I wasn't waiting for a win anymore. I had simply run out of coins. I walked into the bedroom. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. Even from across the room, I could hear it vibrating against the wood. It wasn't a gentle buzz. It was a frantic, angry rattle. The screen lit up the dark room in spasmodic flashes. I picked it up. Notifications were stacked like bricks. Lauren texted that I was insane and humiliated her in front of investors. Dad texted that my mother was crying in the car and that I was being petty. Mom left a voicemail. I didn't listen, but the transcription preview was enough. "I don't know who you think you are, but you need to fix this now." I scrolled and scrolled. Not a single message asked why. Not one asked if I could afford the bill. Not one asked if I was okay. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the disruption to their supply chain. They were angry because the ATM had eaten their card. It was a synchronized assault designed to overwhelm my defenses and drag me back into apology and compliance. But as I read the words selfish, dramatic, ruinous, I didn't feel shame. I felt something colder. I felt like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. This wasn't love. It wasn't even family. It was a transaction that had gone sour. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. The blue light painted my face in the dark. I didn't type a response. I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I opened a blank spreadsheet. If they wanted to talk about what I owed them, fine. We would talk. But we would not use guilt as currency. We would use math. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was a professional audit. Date, item, cost. I started with the easy things. The rent for Lauren's studio apartment 6 years ago. Check number 45, $1,200. The bail money for Dad's DUI, $5,000. The plane tickets for Mom's mental health break to Sedona, $800. The numbers stacked quickly, a column of black ink telling the story of my financial stagnation. Then I realized the money was only half the debt. I created a new column and titled it The Ghost Ledger, the costs without receipts, but with real damage. The anniversary dinner I missed because Lauren had a panic attack about a casting call. The weekend I spent cleaning out Dad's garage while he watched football inside. The moment Mom dismissed my promotion as nice, and then spent 40 minutes on Lauren's haircut. I typed until my fingers ached. I listed swallowed apologies, ignored boundaries, every time I had been designated driver, therapist, emotional punching bag. I was building a balance sheet of grief. The total was staggering. I wasn't just in the red, I was bankrupt. Jacob was scrolling through his phone beside me. He held it up. "Look at this," he said. It was a photo he had taken of the receipt at the restaurant. He zoomed in past the steak and wine. In small print there was a line item I had missed in my rage. Private room deposit, future event hold, $1,500. I froze. "What is that?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, "but it's dated for next month." I grabbed my phone and called the restaurant. It was late, but the manager answered. I used the calm voice I had mastered over years of smoothing disasters. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm the details for the deposit on the Henderson receipt from tonight. We just want to make sure the date is correct for the anniversary party." The manager tapped on his keyboard. "Yes, ma'am. The Tuscany room is reserved for Susan and David's 30th anniversary celebration on the 15th. The 1,500 deposit secures the space." I hung up. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. The 30th anniversary party, the one Mom told me was canceled, the one she claimed they couldn't afford. They weren't canceling it, they were booking it, and they were using my money. The money they wanted me to pay for Lauren's launch dinner was also being used to secure a party I wasn't even invited to. They didn't ask to come over. They announced it. Sunday afternoon. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "We're downstairs. Buzz us up. We need to settle this." Jacob stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, ready for a fight. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. "No," I said. "You stay in the bedroom. I need to do this myself." I needed them to see that my strength didn't come from him, it came from me. I buzzed them in. When I opened the door, the hallway seemed to shrink. My father walked in first, filling the space with his heavy, disappointed presence. My mother followed, clutching her purse like a weapon. Lauren came last, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors to hide eyes swollen from performative crying. They didn't take off their coats. They didn't say hello. They marched into my living room and claimed my space like they held the deed. "Sit down," my father said. Not a question, a command. I sat in the armchair facing the sofa. I placed the manila folder I had prepared on the coffee table between us. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, and the blown-up photo of the receipt with the Tuscany deposit circled in red. I rested my hand on top of it. "We are going to reset," my mother began, voice tight and controlled. "You have lost your way, Madison. Tuesday night was a disgrace. You embarrassed your sister. You disrespected your father. You made a scene that people are still talking about." Lauren added that she had never been so humiliated and that her investors were asking if they were financially unstable. Dad interrupted and said they were willing to move past it because I was under stress, maybe jealous, maybe feeling left behind. He said they forgave me, but I needed to apologize. I needed to pay the bill I walked out on. I needed to make it right. I looked at them, really looked at them. For years, this tribunal would have terrified me. I would have been crying, begging them to understand, desperate to prove I wasn't the bad guy. But tonight, the fear was gone. In its place was the cold detachment of an auditor staring at a failing company's books. They weren't my family in that moment. They were bad investments, trying to secure another round of funding. "Are you finished?" I asked softly. "We're finished when you apologize," my mother snapped. I didn't apologize. I didn't scream. I tapped the manila folder. "I'm not here to apologize," I said. "I'm here to review the accounts." The air shifted. They sensed it. A drop in pressure. The sudden realization that the script they wrote for me was not the one I was reading. They thought they were here to discipline a rebellious child. They didn't realize they were sitting across from a creditor calling in a loan. I opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding against the coffee table was the only noise. I lifted the blown-up receipt and read the items aloud. Dry-aged ribeye, $85. Bottle of Veuve Clicquot, $400. Truffle fries, $18. My mother hissed for me to stop. I didn't. I dropped my finger to the circled line. Private room deposit, future event hold, $1,500. I paused and let it hang in the air. I called the restaurant, Mom, I said. They confirmed the reservation. The Tuscany room for your 30th anniversary next month. The one you told me was canceled because you were too broke to celebrate. Color drained from my mother's face. My father shifted uncomfortably. Lauren stopped fake crying and looked at them, confused. You said you weren't doing a party, she said. My mother stammered and claimed they didn't want to burden me, that they knew I was stressed about money and didn't want me to feel obligated to buy a gift. Obligated, I echoed, and let out a short, dry laugh. You didn't want me to feel obligated, so you used my credit card to book the venue. I picked up the spreadsheet and fanned out the pages. This is an audit of the last 5 years, I said. Lauren's rent, Dad's DUI lawyer fees, Mom's mental health trips, the phone bill I've paid since I was 22, the streaming services you all use, the emergencies that were really just consequences. I tapped the total. $42,350. That is what I have paid into this family in 5 years. That is a down payment on a house. That is my future liquidated to subsidize your lifestyles. My father's face turned red. He said they raised me and I owed them. I don't owe you anything, I said, and my voice did not rise, but the intensity did. It cut through him like a knife. I realized something. I'm not a daughter to you, I'm a venture capitalist. I'm the silent partner you run to when you need a bailout but refuse to give equity. I stood up and pointed to the door. And I have decided this is a bad investment. I'm pulling my funding. Get out. My mother stood, reaching for my hand, pleading for a conversation, offering a payment plan. I pulled my hand away. There is no payment plan. The account is closed. Get out of my house and leave your key on the table. If you try to use it again, I will change the locks. If you harass me, I will take this to small claims court. I am done purchasing your love. They stared at me and realized the bank was closed. Slowly, silently, my father placed his key on the coffee table beside the evidence of his greed. He didn't look back. They filed out one by one. The door clicked shut behind them with a finality that echoed in my bones. Weeks passed. Leaves outside my window turned from green to gold to brown. It has been 3 months since the audit. My phone sits on the coffee table, screen black, silent. For years, that silence would have terrified me. It would have felt like punishment. Now it feels like a receipt for a debt fully paid. It feels like peace. I opened my banking app this morning and the numbers were higher than I had ever seen. The monthly drain stopped. The phone bills, the streaming services, the emergency loans, the $42,000 I would have bled out over the next 5 years is staying right here. I turned to Jacob as he made coffee. Book it, I said. We aren't going to Italy. We aren't going where my mother wanted to act out her fantasy of a perfect family. We are going to Tokyo because that is where I want to go. For the first time in my life, my resources are funding my desires, not someone else's delusions. I sat at my desk and opened the spreadsheet one last time. The ghost ledger. It was no longer anger. It was just data, historical records of a failed business venture. I moved the file to an archive folder and clicked close. The screen went black and reflected my face back at me. I looked tired, yes, but I also looked free. The cost of my freedom was high. I lost a mother, a father, and a sister. I lost the illusion of a safety net. But looking around my quiet living room, knowing nobody was coming to disturb my sanctuary, I knew the price of staying would have been higher. The account is closed. The balance is 0. I am finally in the black.